What if the life you've always envisioned for yourself isn't waiting for you in some distant future, but is instead quietly waiting for you to simply turn around and claim it? Imagine, if you will, that you are standing on the shore, looking out at a vast gray ocean. For years, you've been told that a ship is coming for you, a ship carrying everything you need, the perfect opportunity, the recognition you deserve, the strength to overcome your struggles, the peace you so deeply crave. So you wait. You watch the horizon through sun and storm, through seasons of hope and seasons of despair. You read books about shipbuilding, you study maps of the sea, you talk with other watchers on the shore. But the horizon remains stubbornly empty. The years pass, the tides come and go, and the ship never appears. This feeling, this state of waiting, is one of the most profoundly human experiences we share. We wait for a sign, for permission, for the right moment. We tell ourselves stories to make the waiting bearable, that life owes us a rescue, that some external force, a mentor, a soulmate, a lottery win will arrive and finally set our world right. It's a comforting thought, isn't it? It feels safe. It absolves us of a terrifying weight. But as the Stoic philosophers of ancient Rome and Greece would gently remind us, that comfort is a gilded cage. It is the soft, seductive lie that keeps us small while pretending to protect us. And this brings us to the first and perhaps most difficult truth we must face if we are to find real, unshakable freedom. It is a truth that may feel like a punch to the gut at first, but I promise you, on the other side of it lies not despair, but immense power. The first truth is this: no one is coming to save you. Please let that sink in for a moment, not as a sentence of doom, but as a declaration of liberation. There is no cavalry. There is no magical moment. There is no cosmic intervention waiting in the wings. There is just you, your choices, your effort, your will. When you truly deeply accept this, the world shifts on its axis. The energy you once spent scanning the horizon can finally be turned inward to the only place it ever truly mattered. You stop being a watcher and you start becoming a builder. I can imagine what some of you might be thinking. That sounds harsh. That sounds lonely. And yes, in a world that has conditioned us from childhood to look for external guidance, it can feel that way. In school, we raised our hands and waited to be told what to do. In our early careers, we waited for a boss to recognize our potential. In our stories and films, we are constantly shown the narrative of the chosen one, saved by fate or a wiser, more powerful mentor. But real life, the life lived by men and women of substance and quiet strength, operates on a different principle. Consider Marcus Aurelius. Here was a man who was by all accounts the most powerful person in the known world, an emperor. If anyone had the right to expect things to be done for him, it was him. Yet when you read his private journals, the book we now call Meditations, you don't find the words of a man waiting for others to solve his problems. You find the words of a man wrestling with himself in the cold and mud of the German frontier, far from the comforts of Rome. He wrote to himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He wasn't writing this as a philosophical platitude. He was writing it as a survival guide. He knew that his peace, his integrity, his character did not depend on the loyalty of his generals or the state of the empire. It depended on his ability to master his own mind. He knew no one was coming to save his soul from fear, from anger, from despair. That was his job alone. This is the fundamental shift from a life of passive hope to a life of active creation. But it's crucial we make a distinction here, a distinction that trips up so many people. Accepting that no one is coming to save you is not the same as blaming yourself for everything that has happened to you. They are two entirely different concepts. You may not be to blame for the wounds you carry. You may not be to blame for the difficult circumstances you were born into, or the betrayals you have suffered. The world can be an unjust and painful place. Stoicism does not deny this. But it does insist on this. While you may not be at fault for what has happened, you are 100% responsible for what you do next. You are responsible for your healing. You are responsible for your response. The great psychologist Carl Jung, whose work often echoes these ancient truths, put it beautifully. "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." That is the heart of it. The power isn't in rewriting the past, but in writing the future one choice at a time. Think of the people you truly admire in your own life. Not the ones with the most fame or fortune, but the ones who carry a certain groundedness, a quiet resilience. The single parent who works 2 jobs and still finds the energy to be present for their children. The friend who fought their way back from the depths of addiction or grief one painful day at a time. The person who, after a devastating career setback, didn't wait for a new job offer but started building something of their own from scratch. Did someone hand them a roadmap? Did a magical opportunity fall from the sky? No. They got there because at some point they stopped waiting for the ship and realized they had the materials to build a raft all along. They embraced the Stoic ideal that the obstacle is the way. That thing in your path isn't there to stop you, it is the path. The journey to strength is not a detour around hardship, it is a walk directly through it. And this leads us directly to the second profound truth that must follow the first. Once you accept that you are the sole captain of your ship, the question immediately becomes, how do I sail? Especially when the seas are rough and the winds of emotion are blowing me off. Of course, what do you do when you know you should act, but you simply don't feel like it? This brings us to our second truth. Life responds to action, not to emotion. We live in an age that worships feelings. We are told to follow our passion, to trust our gut, to wait until we feel inspired. Our emotions are treated as infallible guides, as the ultimate arbiters of truth. And while our emotions are valid, they are real signals from our body and mind. They are terrible, terrible masters. They are fickle, unreliable, and often lie to us. You can feel utterly overwhelmed, hopeless and defeated, and your life will not change 1 inch in response to the intensity of that feeling. You can journal for hours about your despair, cry to your friends, scream into a pillow. But at the end of the day, the circumstances of your life respond to only one thing: what you do. This may sound cold, but I invite you to see it as liberating. If your progress depended on your feelings, you would be perpetually stuck a hostage to your moods. But it doesn't. You cannot always control how you feel, but you can with practice always control what you do next. We have this idea backward. We think we need to feel motivated to go to the gym. We need to feel confident to speak up in a meeting. We need to feel inspired to write that first page. But if you have lived long enough, you know this is a trap. If you wait for the perfect feeling, you will wait forever. The truly resilient, effective people in this world are not powered by an endless well of positivity. They are powered by discipline. And discipline is not some brutal, joyless punishment. Discipline is simply remembering what you want most instead of what you want now. It's the act of choosing your future self over your present moment feelings. You can feel exhausted and still go for a 10-minute walk. You can feel unworthy and still send the job application. You can feel terrified and still have that necessary difficult conversation. Marcus Aurelius in his journal wrote this command to himself: waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. He didn't say, wait until you feel virtuous. He said, be one. The being comes from the doing. Action is the antidote to despair. Motion creates emotion. So often we wait for the feeling of clarity to descend upon us before we make a move. But clarity is not found in static contemplation. It is a byproduct of engagement. It's like trying to steer a parked car. You can turn the wheel all you want, but nothing happens. The car only responds once it is in motion. You only need to move forward 1 inch, and suddenly you can steer. Your life is the same. Take one small, imperfect action, and you suddenly have something to work with, something to adjust. Consider the writer who waits for the muse. They may wait for weeks feeling frustrated and blocked. But the professional writer knows the muse is a fair-weather friend. They don't wait. They sit in the chair at the same time every day and they write. They write garbage. They write one good sentence. They write a paragraph they know they will delete tomorrow. It doesn't matter. They are acting. And somewhere in that disciplined act of showing up, the magic happens. The momentum builds. The inspiration they were waiting for doesn't visit them before they start. It finds them already at work. This is a profound reordering of our internal world. To stop asking, how do I feel? And to start asking, what will I do? To recognize that our feelings are like the weather they pass. They can be stormy, they can be sunny, but they are not the landscape itself. Your actions are the landscape. What you do day in and day out carves the reality you live in. So, we have these two foundational truths standing together, like two great pillars at the entrance to a more intentional life. First, that you and you alone are the one responsible for building the life you want. no one is coming. And second, that the tool for this construction is not the fleeting nature of your emotions, but the solid, reliable practice of your daily actions. Accepting these can be a heavy lift. It asks us to put down the comforting blanket of hope for an external rescue and instead pick up the tools of personal responsibility. It asks us to honor our commitments to ourselves, even when our feelings are screaming in protest. It's a path of substance, not ease. And as we stand here contemplating these pillars, another question naturally arises. If we are meant to be builders using action as our primary tool, why do we so often feel completely drained of energy before we even begin? We get to the end of the day feeling utterly exhausted, yet when we look back, we can't point to a single meaningful thing we built. What is this fatigue, and where does it come from? It's not the satisfying ache of a day well spent. It's a scattered, hollow exhaustion, and understanding its source is the key to unlocking the energy we need to truly act. That is the mystery we will explore together in our next conversation. The truth about where our energy really goes and why you might not be tired, but something else entirely. For now, I invite you to just sit with these first two ideas, that you are your own savior, and that your power lies not in how you feel, but in what you choose to do. Let them settle. See how they feel, not as a burden, but as the keys to the very freedom you've been searching for. In our last conversation, we established two foundational pillars for a life of purpose, drawing from that deep well of Stoic wisdom. The first, that no one is coming to save you, a truth that hands the power and the responsibility for your life squarely back to you. And the second, that life responds not to the storms of our emotions, but to the quiet, steady rhythm of our actions. But we left off with a question, a modern mystery that plagues so many of us. We accept that we must act, that we must be the builders of our own lives. Yet we so often end the day in a state of utter exhaustion, a hollow kind of fatigue that feels entirely different from the satisfying ache of hard, meaningful work. We feel drained, but when we trace back our steps, we find we didn't run a marathon or build a cathedral. We just were. We were busy, but not productive. We were stimulated, but not fulfilled. So, what is this invisible drain on our life force? This brings us to our third essential truth, one that the ancient Stoics seem to anticipate with stunning clarity, despite living in a world without a single notification or newsfeed. The truth is this: you are not tired, you are scattered. Let that phrase settle. It's a diagnosis. The fatigue you're feeling is not likely burnout from noble effort, but burnout from fragmentation. Your mind, your most precious asset, is being pulled in 100 different directions at once all day long. Think of your attention as a source of light. A focused beam is powerful. It can illuminate the darkest corners, it can guide you forward. But what happens when you place that light inside a fractured crystal? The light doesn't vanish, but it scatters into 1,000 tiny weak shards, shining on everything and illuminating nothing. That is the state of the modern mind. That is the source of the drain. We live in what has been called an attention economy. Every app on your phone, every algorithm on your social media, feed every breaking news alert is designed with a single purpose: to hijack your focus, to pull you out of the present moment and into a state of constant low-grade reaction. We scroll through one person's vacation photos, then a political argument, then an ad for something we don't need, then a cute video of a cat, all within the span of 30 seconds. Each one of these actions is a tiny cognitive shift, a small expenditure of mental energy. Alone, they are nothing. But compounded over hours, over days, over years, they lead to a profound spiritual exhaustion. The Roman philosopher Seneca, writing 2 millennia ago, said something that has never been more relevant: to be everywhere is to be nowhere. That is the perfect description of this scattered state. When your mind is in your inbox while you're talking to your child, or on social media, while you're supposed to be reading a book, or worrying about tomorrow while you're walking through the beauty of today, you are everywhere. And therefore, you are nowhere. You are mentally absent from your own life. And that absence, that disconnection from the present, is profoundly tiring. Here is the trap. When we feel this way, we believe the solution is more rest. We think, I just need a vacation, or I'll take a nap. But rest is not the solution if the problem is a polluted diet of the mind. You don't fix a body that's been fed junk food by simply sleeping more. You fix it by changing what you feed it. In the same way, you don't fix mental overload by simply zoning out more. You fix it with its direct opposite, intentional, undivided focus. Try this as an experiment. Just for today, choose one single task that matters to you, and for a mere 15 minutes, give it the gift of your full attention. No phone in sight. No other tabs open on your computer. No television on in the background. It could be writing a page in a journal, having a real conversation with a loved one, or going for a walk and only focusing on the feeling of the air and the sounds of the world. What you will discover is astonishing. At the end of that 15 minutes, you will feel not more tired, but more energized. You will feel clearer, more grounded, more alive. That feeling is the feeling of presence, and it is the antidote to the scattered exhaustion that haunts our modern lives. Our fatigue isn't a lack of energy. It's a lack of focus. Our minds are starved for the nourishment of deep, singular attention. This constant scattering of our focus, this fragmentation of our conscious moments, leads us directly to the greatest tragedy of a distracted life. It's a theft that happens in tiny increments, second by second, minute by minute, so quietly we barely notice it until we look up and realize decades have gone by. This brings us to our fourth truth. A truth that once you fully grasp it, will change your relationship with every single moment of your life. The truth is, time is the only real currency. You can lose your money and earn it back. You can damage your health and often with effort reclaim it. You can break a relationship and sometimes with care repair it. But time is the one asset that flows in only one direction. Once a second is spent, it is gone forever. It is non-renewable, non-refundable, and absolutely finite. And yet, we treat this most precious currency as if it were cheap, disposable plastic. Imagine if every morning you woke up and your bank account had $86 to $400 deposited into it. The only rule is that you have to spend it all by midnight. Whatever you don't use disappears. You can't save it for the next day. Wouldn't you be incredibly intentional about how you spent every single dollar? You would budget, you would plan, you would ensure not a cent was wasted on things that brought you no value. Well, every single morning, life gives you 400 seconds. And most of us allow this fortune to be squandered by pointless arguments, by mindless scrolling, by worrying about things we cannot control, by giving our precious moments away to people and activities that drain us rather than enrich us. Seneca once again pierces through the heart of the matter. He wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." He wasn't lamenting our mortality. He was issuing a challenge to our priorities. The problem isn't the length of the song, it's that we're not truly listening to the music. If you are not intentional with your time, the world will be happy to use it for its own agenda. Every quick favor, every just 5 minutes, every mindless distraction is a transaction where you are trading your life force for something of far lesser value. If you are honest with yourself when you say, "I don't have time," what you often mean is, it's not a priority. It's a difficult thing to admit. We complain that our dreams are out of reach, yet we are not willing to dedicate even 30 minutes a day, a tiny fraction of our 400 seconds to pursuing them. Your calendar, your daily schedule, is a more honest reflection of your true values than any mission statement you could ever write. Time reveals your priorities. This realization isn't meant to induce panic or regret. Its purpose is to bring clarity. It's a tool. The Stoics use the concept of memento mori. Remember, you will die not to be morbid, but to be focused. Marcus Aurelius would remind himself, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." When you hold the finiteness of your time in your awareness, it acts as a filter. It helps you cut through the noise. You start to see how much of what you worry about is trivial. You stop tolerating mediocrity in your own life. You get serious about what and who truly matters. So we see how these two truths are inextricably linked. Our scattered attention leads to a squandering of our most valuable currency, our time. To reclaim our time, we must first learn to reclaim our focus. We must plug the leaks in the bucket of our attention so that we can hold on to the precious water of our moments. This is not a call to do more. In fact, it is often a call to do less, but to do it with more presence, to protect your mornings, to guard your evenings, to carve out sacred time for silence, for deep work, for genuine connection, to build gentle but firm boundaries around your attention, because in doing so, you are building a fortress around your life. But What happens when you begin to do this? What does it feel like to turn off the noise, to sit in silence, to choose the focused task over the easy distraction? What is the immediate visceral experience of reclaiming your life in this way? I will tell you the truth. It does not feel easy. It does not feel blissful, at least not at first. It feels like resistance. It feels like friction. It feels uncomfortable. And learning to not only tolerate, but to welcome that feeling is the next critical step on our path. For within that discomfort lies the very mechanism of our growth. That is what we will turn our attention to in our next conversation, the surprising and essential truth that real meaningful growth always feels like discomfort. For now, I leave you with this to ponder. If your attention is your light and your time is your currency, where have you been investing them? And is that investment yielding the life you truly wish to live? At the close of our last conversation, we stood at a threshold. We had acknowledged that to reclaim our lives, we must first reclaim our scattered attention and honor our most precious currency, our time. But we also acknowledged that this very act of reclamation, of choosing the focused task over the easy distraction of choosing silence over noise, does not at first feel like relief. It feels like friction. It feels like resistance. It feels profoundly uncomfortable. Our modern world is an empire built on the avoidance of discomfort. From the temperature of our homes to the instant gratification of our food and entertainment, every system is designed to keep us in a state of frictionless ease. We have been conditioned to believe that a feeling of discomfort is a signal that something is wrong, that it's a sign to stop, to retreat, to find an easier path. But the Stoics, and indeed the wisdom traditions from across the globe, teach us the exact opposite. They offer us our fifth essential truth, a truth that once embraced becomes a powerful compass for your life's journey. It is this growth feels like discomfort. Real growth, the kind that forges character and builds a life of substance, is uncomfortable by its very nature. It is meant to be. Think of the process of strengthening a muscle. To build strength, you must lift a weight that is heavy enough to create microscopic tears in the muscle fibers. The process is literally one of stress and breakdown. It is the subsequent repair of those tears that makes the muscle grow back stronger. The discomfort, the strain, the ache, these are not signs that the process is failing. They are the signs that the process is working. Your mind, your character, your emotional resilience, they all operate on the exact same principle. They cannot grow in a state of perpetual comfort. They require resistance. They require a healthy dose of what the philosopher Nietzsche called, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." This discomfort shows up in our lives wearing many different outfits. It's the awkwardness of trying something new and being terrible at it at first. It's the vulnerability of expressing a heartfelt emotion to someone you love. It's the tension that hangs in the air right before you have a difficult but necessary honest conversation. It is the burn of discipline when you choose the workout over the snooze button, the blank page over the endless scroll. Our immediate primal instinct is to flee from these feelings. This feels bad, our brain screams. Abort mission. And that instinct is not our enemy. It's just an outdated survival mechanism. For our ancient ancestors, discomfort often meant immediate danger, a predator in the bushes, a lack of shelter in a storm. But today in our world of relative safety, that same feeling of discomfort usually signals something entirely different. It signals that growth is knocking at your door. Epictetus, a former slave who became one of the most revered Stoic teachers, said, "Difficulties are things that show a person what they are." He saw adversity not as something to be cursed or avoided, but as a sparring partner for the soul. When life challenges you, it's not trying to break you. It's trying to reveal you to yourself. It's holding up a mirror and asking, who will you choose to be in this moment? Think back to a time in your life when you truly changed, when you became stronger, wiser, or more compassionate. I would wager it wasn't during a relaxing vacation or a lazy Sunday afternoon. It was likely in the aftermath of a heartbreak, a failure, a loss, or a health scare. It was in those moments when life stripped away your illusions and forced you into direct contact with reality that your character was forged. That is what discomfort does. It burns away the trivial and reveals the essential. The life you want, the one where you feel grounded and clear and quietly confident, is waiting for you on the other side of that discomfort. Every time you choose the comfortable path, every time you avoid the difficult conversation, put off the challenging project, or shrink from an opportunity, because it feels scary, you are casting a vote. You are voting for the person you are today. But every time you consciously lean into discomfort, every time you take a deep breath and do the hard thing anyway, you are casting a vote for the person you are striving to become. You are tearing down the muscle so it can be rebuilt stronger than before. This brings a whole new meaning to that famous Stoic phrase, "The obstacle is the way." It means that the feeling of resistance is not a stop sign. It is a signpost pointing you directly toward your next area of growth. That thing you are avoiding, that is your path, not the easy detour around it, the thing itself. And as we learn to walk this path, as we begin to intentionally choose growth over comfort, something profound and often painful begins to happen. We change. Our values clarify. Our frequency shifts. And the world around us must, in response, reorganize itself. This leads to one of the most bittersweet discomforts of a life lived with intention. It is our sixth, painful but necessary truth. You will outgrow people. There is a quiet, often confusing ache that comes when you realize that people, places, or habits that once felt like home now feel off. It might be a friendship that used to be a source of joy, but is now primarily a source of gossip or complaint. It could be a family dynamic that requires you to shrink yourself to keep the peace. It might be a social circle whose primary activities no longer align with the person you are trying to become. At first, you will likely feel a pang of guilt. You might question yourself. Am I being selfish? Am I being arrogant or judgmental? You may try to force it to continue playing a role in a story that no longer feels like yours, all for the sake of history or loyalty. But if you are constantly editing yourself, watering down your truth, and dimming your light just to fit into spaces you once occupied, you are engaged in a slow act of self-betrayal. This is not about betrayal of others. It is about evolution. It is one of the hardest lessons of personal growth. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote constantly about the nature of the universe. He said, "Observe constantly that all things take place by change." He saw that life is by its very nature a process of constant transformation. You are not the same person you were 5 years ago, or even 1 year ago. And that is a good thing. You are supposed to evolve. And sometimes evolution means shedding a skin that has become too tight. This process is rarely about one person being good and the other being bad. It is not about superiority. It is simply about resonance. A person can be a wonderful, kind human being and still not be on the same frequency as the person you are becoming. Their path may be taking them in one direction, while yours is taking you in another. You can hold immense gratitude for the role they played in your life, for the love and memories you shared, and simultaneously acknowledge that the connection in its current form no longer supports your highest growth or theirs. Think of it like this. When you are planting a garden, you know that a sapling needs a small pot. The pot provides structure and safety. But if the sapling is to become a mighty tree, it must eventually be planted in an open field where its roots can expand. To stay in the pot forever out of loyalty to the pot would be to condemn the tree to a stunted existence. Many of our early relationships are like that pot. They are essential for a season of our life. But if our soul is calling us to grow, we cannot remain there. The snake that cannot cast its skin has to die, as Nietzsche wrote. He was speaking of a spiritual death, the stagnation that occurs when we cling to the old out of fear of the new. Letting go doesn't always have to be a dramatic confrontation. More often, it is a quiet and gradual creation of space. It's replying to texts a little more slowly. It's declining an invitation here and there. It's choosing an evening of solitude and reflection over a social event that you know will drain you. It's not about being cold, it's about being clear. It's about honoring the energy you have and investing it in ways that align with your deepest values. And yes, it will be uncomfortable. You will grieve. You will miss the easy familiarity of the way things were. You will question yourself. This is the discomfort of growth wearing another of its many outfits. But if you can hold steady through that discomfort, something beautiful happens on the other side. You create a vacuum, and the universe, which abhors a vacuum, will rush to fill it with new energy, new people, and new opportunities that are in alignment with the new you. The right people for the next chapter of your journey will begin to find you not because you chase them, but because you finally made room for them to enter. So we see the arc. We must choose to act. To do so, we must reclaim our scattered attention and our precious time. When we do, we will inevitably feel the discomfort of resistance. And as we learn to lean into that discomfort, we will begin to grow and evolve. And as we evolve, we will naturally outgrow people and situations that no longer fit the person we are becoming. This process of letting go of creating space brings us face to face with another challenge. How do we manage this? How do we protect our energy and our peace as we navigate these changing relationships and the demands of the world? It requires the creation of a different kind of structure, an invisible architecture for a peaceful life. It requires the conscious setting of boundaries and the profound consequences of failing to do so. That is where our next conversation must begin. When we last spoke, we walked through the necessary fire of personal growth. We acknowledged that to become who we are meant to be, we must learn to embrace discomfort, and that this evolution will sometimes require us to lovingly yet firmly let go of people and parts of our past that no longer resonate with our path. This is a courageous and often painful process. It is the act of tending to the garden of your own soul, of deciding what you want to cultivate, and of pulling the weeds that are stunting your growth. But any good gardener knows that their work is not done once the weeds are pulled. If the garden is left unprotected, new weeds will be blown in by the wind, and wild animals may come and trample the tender new shoots. A gardener knows that to cultivate a space of peace and intentional growth, they must build a fence. Not an impenetrable wall of stone, but a simple, clear, and effective fence that says, "This is sacred ground. This is where something beautiful is being grown. Please respect this space." This fence in our lives is the practice of setting boundaries, and this leads us to our seventh profound truth, a truth that is the very architecture of a peaceful and self-directed life. It is this: a life with weak boundaries will always be a chaotic life. Peace is not a passive state. It is not something you stumble upon by accident, like finding a forgotten coin in a coat pocket. Peace is the result of a conscious, deliberate, and sometimes difficult construction. It is the house you build for your soul, and the framework of that house is your boundaries. Without them, your life is like a home with no doors and no locks. Anyone and everyone can wander in at any time, bringing with them their moods, their demands, their drama, and their chaos. They can track their mud on your floors and leave their emotional baggage in your living room, and you are left to clean up the mess long after they have gone. And the most insidious part of living this way is that over time, we begin to believe this chaos is normal. We confuse being constantly available with being kind. We mistake the act of abandoning our own needs with being compassionate. And we end up feeling drained, resentful, and overwhelmed, not because of what we are actively doing, but because of what we are passively allowing. We must redefine what a boundary is. A boundary is not a wall you build to punish or shut people out. A boundary is a filter you design to let the right energy in. It is not an act of aggression, it is an act of profound self-respect. It is not about being selfish, it is about being self-aware enough to know your own capacity, your limits, and your needs. A boundary is quite simply the most honest and loving way you can interact with the world. It's you saying with quiet integrity, "This is where I end and you begin. I will honor you, and I require that you honor me in return." Epictetus taught that the chief task in life is to separate things into two categories: what is in our control and what is not. Your peace, your inner tranquility falls into the first category. It is yours to cultivate and protect, but you cannot protect it if you allow the external world to dictate your inner state. Boundaries are the practical application of this core Stoic principle. They are you taking control of what you can, your time, your energy, your focus. Let's be clear, when you first begin to erect this fence, people will notice, and some of them will not like it, particularly those who have benefited from your lack of one. They may push against it. They may try to guilt you, saying things like, "You've changed," or "You're being difficult." I want you to hear this clearly. When this happens, it is often a sign that your boundaries are working perfectly. You are disrupting a pattern that never served you in the first place. You are teaching the world how to treat you not through lectures, but through the embodied, consistent action of what you will and will not allow in your sacred space. And what does this sound like in practice? It's often much simpler and quieter than we imagine. It is a calm, "Thank you for the invitation, but I won't be able to make it." It is a simple, "I need some time alone to recharge." It is a firm, "That doesn't work for me." Notice there is no need for a long, defensive explanation. You are not a courtroom defendant. You are the sovereign of your own life. You do not owe anyone a dissertation to justify your peace. So now imagine it. You have done the hard work. You have built your fence. You have begun to protect your garden from the chaos of the outside world. You have reclaimed your time and your focus. The soil is now rich and protected. The question that naturally follows is, what will you plant? What will you do with this newfound space, this reclaimed energy? This brings us to the very heart of a life well lived. It is our eighth essential truth, and it is the engine of all transformation. You are what you do daily, your identity. The person you are actually becoming is not forged in grand dramatic moments of resolution. It is not defined by the goals you write down on New Year's Day or the dreams you hold in your heart. Those things are important, they provide direction. But your identity is forged in the tiny, almost invisible, seemingly insignificant choices you make every single day. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. The great philosopher Aristotle, whose wisdom on this subject aligns perfectly with the Stoics, said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. The life you are living today is the sum total of the habits you have cultivated. And the life you will live a year from now is being determined by the habits you are practicing right now in this very moment. There is often a painful gap between the person we say we want to be and the person our daily actions show us we are. We say we want health, but we repeatedly choose the couch over a walk. We say we want peace, but we repeatedly choose to engage in pointless online arguments. We say we want to learn and grow, but we repeatedly choose distraction over a book. Each of these choices is a vote. It is a vote cast for a particular version of your future self. And this is where the protected space you've created becomes so vital. It gives you the clarity to see these choices for what they are. The secret to changing your life is not a Herculean act of willpower. It is to make the votes for your future self so small, so simple, that they are easy to cast. You don't need to overhaul your entire life overnight. That is a recipe for failure. You simply need to build a chain of tiny, consistent wins. If you want to be a writer, the vote isn't write a novel. The vote is write one sentence. If you want to be healthy, the vote isn't run a marathon. The vote is put on your walking shoes and walk to the end of the driveway. That's it. Why? Because the goal of this tiny action is not the output. It's not the sentence or the short walk. The goal is to reinforce a new identity. With each tiny vote, you are telling your subconscious mind, I am the kind of person who shows up. I am the kind of person who keeps a promise to myself. And this right here is the source of genuine, unshakable self-confidence. It isn't built on praise from others or external achievements. It is built in the quiet, private moments when you do the thing you said you would do long after the mood you set it in has left. It is the bedrock of self-trust. Over time, as you string these tiny votes together, a powerful shift occurs. You no longer have to fight yourself so hard. The habit becomes part of your identity. You are no longer a person trying to be disciplined. You simply are a disciplined person. It is who you are. So, we see the beautiful practical synergy between these two truths. We must first build the fence of our boundaries to create a space of peace and order. This is the defensive aspect of a good life. Then within that protected space, we must engage in the offensive aspect, the conscious daily cultivation of the habits that will shape us into the person we aspire to be. The boundaries create the container. The habits are what we choose to fill it with. But as we embark on this path, as we begin to set those boundaries and build those new intentional habits, we often run into a powerful, invisible force that can stop us in our tracks. It's an old fear, the fear of being seen, the fear of judgment. What will they think of me if I say no? What if people think this new habit of mine is strange? What if I try and fail and everyone sees this fear of an imaginary audience, this constant performance for a panel of judges that exists only in our minds? Dismantling, that is our next crucial task. And that is exactly where we will begin our next conversation. At the end of our last discussion, we arrived at a crucial point in our journey of self-reclamation. We recognize that to live a life of peace and purpose, we must first build the fence of our boundaries, and then, within that protected space, we must consciously plant the seeds of our becoming through our daily intentional habits. But as we stand there, shovel in hand, ready to cultivate our inner garden, a paralyzing thought often stops us before we even break ground. A quiet voice whispers from the shadows of our mind, "What will people think? What will they say if I start setting these boundaries? What will they think if they see me trying something new and failing? What if they find my new habits, my new way of being strange or foolish? And so, we hesitate. We find ourselves standing on a brightly lit stage we never asked to be on, performing a version of ourselves we think will be acceptable to a vast unseen audience. We live as if our every move is being scrutinized by a panel of judges, and the fear of their verdict can be utterly crippling. This brings us to our 9th essential truth, and it is perhaps one of the most liberating truths we can possibly integrate into our lives. It is the key that unlocks the door to true authenticity. The truth is, most people are not thinking about you nearly as much as you think they are. Let that feel like a great weight lifting from your shoulders. The spotlight you feel shining so intensely upon you is for the most part a figment of your own imagination. This isn't because people are cruel or uncaring. It is because they are like you, the lead actor in their own grand drama. They are preoccupied with their own lives, their own insecurities, their own fears of judgment. The person you're worried is scrutinizing your outfit is actually worried that their own comment in the meeting sounded unintelligent. The neighbor you think is judging your unkempt lawn is actually consumed with anxiety about their child's school report. They are not the audience for your play. They are busy rehearsing the lines for their own. In psychology, this phenomenon has a name: the spotlight effect. It is the well-documented cognitive bias where we tend to believe that we are being noticed far more than we really are. And once you understand that this is a known quirk of the human mind, you can begin to treat it as such, not as a reality to be feared, but as a mental habit to be gently corrected. That awkward thing you said at a party last week that you have been replaying in your mind ever since, it was likely forgotten by everyone else before they even got in their car to go home. The Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And is there any greater example of this than the anxiety we feel about the opinions of others? We shrink ourselves not because someone has actually judged us, but because we imagine they might. We stay silent. We smooth our edges. We play small, not because it is required, but because we have convinced ourselves it is safer. But a life dedicated to the avoidance of imaginary judgment is not a safe life. It is a small one. It is a life lived in the margins, a ghost in its own story. And what is the true cost of this fear? It is you, the real you, the you with the quirky laugh, the unconventional hobby, the bold idea, the unapologetic truth. That part of you dies a little every time you prioritize the imagined comfort of a stranger over the authentic expression of your own soul. And here is the beautiful irony: when you finally grant yourself the permission to stop performing, when you show up as you truly are, flaws, quirks, and all, you don't receive the judgment you feared. You receive something far more valuable: genuine respect. Authenticity is magnetic. People are not drawn to perfection. They are drawn to what is real. So, if we can truly embrace this, if we can step off that imaginary stage and allow the ghostly audience to fade away, we are left with a profound sense of freedom. The pressure is off. We are no longer curating our lives for the approval of others. And this freedom brings with it a new and vital responsibility. The question shifts from, "What will they think of me?" to a much more important one: "What will I think of me?" Now that we are no longer tending to our public image, we can finally begin to tend to our private inner world. What do we allow into this newly sacred space of our own mind? This leads us directly to our 10th truth, which is the foundation of our mental and spiritual well-being. It is this: you become what you consume. Your mind is not a fortress. It is more like a sponge. It soaks in its surroundings. The thoughts, feelings, and beliefs you hold do not arise from a vacuum. They are cultivated by the information, the conversations, the media, and the energy you choose to immerse yourself in every day. If you soak a sponge in muddy water, you cannot be surprised when it drips mud. If you constantly soak your mind in a stream of fear, outrage, gossip, and comparison, you cannot be surprised when your inner world feels anxious, agitated, and insecure. Marcus Aurelius gave us a beautiful and potent image for this. He wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Imagine that. Every piece of content you consume is a drop of dye. A single drop seems insignificant, but drop after drop, hour after hour, the dye begins to saturate the very fabric of your soul, staining your perception of reality until you can no longer tell the difference between the noise of the world and the voice of your own heart. If your mental diet consists of a steady stream of political outrage on the news-curated perfection on social media and cynical conversations with friends, your soul will inevitably be dyed with the colors of anxiety, inadequacy, and mistrust. This is not to say we should live in a bubble of toxic positivity, pretending that hardship and injustice do not exist. Stoicism is, after all, a philosophy firmly rooted in seeing reality as it is. But there is a vast difference between being aware of the world's problems and marinating your consciousness in them 24 hours a day. There is a difference between processing a difficult emotion and obsessing over it. The former is awareness. The latter is a form of self-contamination. The practical application of this truth is to become a conscious, intentional curator of your mental diet. This is not about censorship. It is about discernment. It begins with a simple practice of awareness. Start paying attention not just to what you are consuming, but to how it makes you feel. After scrolling through that newsfeed for 10 minutes, do you feel more informed and empowered, or do you feel more hopeless and agitated? After spending an hour with that particular friend, do you feel uplifted and energized, or do you feel drained and diminished? After watching that television series, do you feel expanded or just numb? Your feelings are the data. They are telling you what kind of mental fuel you are running on. And if you want to upgrade your life, you must first upgrade your inputs. This can be a very gentle process. You can mute, unfollow, or unsubscribe. You can decide to replace 1 hour of mindless television with 30 minutes of reading a book that nourishes you. You can choose to listen to an inspiring podcast on your commute instead of talk radio designed to make you angry. You can choose silence over stimulation. Stillness, after all, is also a form of content, and it is one of the most nourishing forms there is. You have far more control over your inner world than you have been led to believe. You have the power to choose the die. By taking responsibility for what you consume, you take responsibility for the quality of your thoughts. And as Marcus Aurelius knew, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. So, we see the liberating progression. We are freed from the imaginary judgment of others, which allows us to stop performing. This freedom then gives us the space and the responsibility to curate the quality of our own inner world by consciously choosing what we consume. We are no longer decorating the outside of the house for the neighbors. We are tending to the peace and quality of the life lived within it. But even with this newfound freedom and this commitment to a better mental diet, we often run into another very stubborn internal obstacle. We know what we should do. We know we should choose the book over the scroll, the walk over the couch, the difficult work over the easy distraction. But we just don't. We wait. We tell ourselves we'll start tomorrow. We wait for a feeling, a spark, a sudden wave of motivation. And we find that motivation is a fickle and unreliable friend. It rarely shows up when called, and it never stays for long. How then do we bridge the gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it? How do we fuel our actions when the tank of motivation feels empty? Unraveling the myth of motivation is our next crucial task, and it is there that we will begin our next conversation. At the end of our last talk, we stood at a familiar and often frustrating place. We had cleared the path before us. We had freed ourselves from the imaginary judgment of others and committed to curating our inner world by consciously choosing what we consume. The intention is there. The plan is clear. We know the what, the why, and the how. And yet, on Monday morning, when the alarm clock rings, we are met with a deafening silence from within. The spark, the drive, the feeling we were counting on to propel us into action is nowhere to be found. We call this feeling a lack of motivation, and we treat its absence as a legitimate reason to stay put. We tell ourselves, I'll start when I feel more motivated, or I'm just not feeling it today. We have been taught to see motivation as the sacred fuel for the engine of change. But this brings us to our 11th essential truth, a truth that directly challenges one of the most pervasive myths of modern culture. It is this: motivation is a liar. Motivation is a fair-weather friend. It shows up unannounced when the sun is shining and the path is easy, and it pats you on the back and tells you what a great job you're doing. But on the cold, gray, difficult mornings, the very mornings when your character is actually forged, it is nowhere to be found. It is an emotion, a fleeting feeling, and like all feelings, it is unreliable. To build your life on the foundation of motivation is to build your house upon the shifting sands. The people who achieve great things, whether it's building a business, mastering a craft, or raising a family with grace, are not the most motivated people. They are the most disciplined. And discipline, I must stress, is not the joyless, rigid punishment we often imagine it to be. Discipline is one of the highest forms of self-love. It is the act of keeping the promises you make to yourself. It is the practice of choosing who you want to become over the fleeting comfort of who you are right now. The amateur waits for motivation. The professional adheres to a schedule. The amateur writer waits for the muse to whisper in their ear. The professional writer knows the muse favors those who are already at their desk, and so they sit down to write at 9 a.m., whether they feel inspired or not. The amateur athlete goes to the gym when they feel a rush of energy. The professional athlete trains on the days they feel tired, sore, and uninspired because they know that those are the days that truly count. Those are the days that separate the wish from the will. Epictetus, in his timeless wisdom, advised, "No great thing is created suddenly." He was reminding us to stop romanticizing the grand flash of inspiration and to start respecting the slow, steady, and often unspectacular process of daily work. You don't need a wave of motivation, you need a system, you need a routine. You need to make the decision once in a moment of clarity and then build a structure around that decision that removes your in-the-moment feelings from the equation. The debate is over, the choice has been made. Now we simply do the work. Think of it like pushing a giant, heavy flywheel. The first few pushes are brutal. It takes immense effort, and the wheel barely budges. This is where most people give up. They don't see an immediate result. The feeling of motivation vanishes, and they walk away. But the disciplined person keeps pushing. They show up the next day, and the next. And slowly, imperceptibly at first, the great wheel begins to turn. Momentum begins to build. And after a while, the wheel's own weight begins to work for them, making each subsequent push easier than the last. That is the magic of consistency. Action does not follow motivation. Motivation follows action. So, we make this powerful shift. We decide to build our lives on the bedrock of discipline, not the shifting sands of motivation. We are ready to be the archer, to draw back the bow, and take our shot regardless of the weather. But as we begin to act with this newfound discipline in the messy, unpredictable arena of the real world, we immediately collide with a new and profound challenge. We do the work, and the results don't come. We have the difficult conversation, and the other person doesn't understand. We launch the project, and the market doesn't respond. This is the point where discipline, if misapplied, can curdle into bitterness, frustration, and anxiety. We try to use our discipline to force the world to control outcomes, to bend other people to our will, and that is a path that leads only to madness. This is because we have forgotten the other half of the equation. This brings us to the 12th truth, which is perhaps the absolute cornerstone of all Stoic thought and the key to genuine, unshakable peace. It is this: you do not need to control everything. In fact, you can't. The desperate attempt to manage every variable, to predict every outcome, to control every perception, is the single greatest source of human suffering. It is an exhausting, impossible task, like trying to tame the ocean. Epictetus began his famous handbook, the Enchiridion, with this thunderously simple idea: some things are up to us, and some things are not. Our task in life, he argued, is to learn to distinguish between the two, and to concern ourselves entirely with the former, while practicing a graceful acceptance of the latter. So, what is up to us? Only our own inner world. Our judgments, our intentions, our choices, our responses. How we choose to act in any given moment. That's it. That is our sacred territory. And what is not up to us? Everything else. The weather, the economy, how other people feel. Whether someone likes us, our health, the outcome of our efforts, the past, the future. Almost everything. At first, this can sound disempowering. What do you mean I can't control the outcome? But I invite you to see it as the Stoics did, as the ultimate empowerment. It is liberating you from an impossible burden. It is allowing you to redirect all of your precious energy from the vast, uncontrollable expanse of the external world to the small but immensely powerful rudder of your own will. There is a classic Stoic analogy of the archer. A skilled archer does everything within her power to ensure a good shot. She selects the finest bow and arrows. She practices her stance, her grip, her breathing for thousands of hours. On the day of the competition, she carefully judges the distance, the wind, and the light. She draws the bowstring back, smoothly aims with an unwavering eye, and releases the arrow with a clean, fluid motion. All of this is within her control. This is her discipline in action. But the moment the arrow leaves the bow, the outcome is no longer up to her. A sudden unseen gust of wind could push it off course. The target could move. The arrow's shaft might have an invisible flaw. The Stoic archer, therefore, does not attach her success or failure to whether the arrow hits the bullseye. She attaches her success to the quality of her process, to the excellence of her shot. She did her part. She focused on what was hers to control. The rest she accepts with grace. We must learn to be this archer in our own lives. Pour your discipline into the quality of your work, not into whether you get the promotion. Pour your discipline into being a loving, present partner, not into trying to control how your partner feels or behaves. Pour your discipline into your healthy daily habits, not into obsessing over a medical diagnosis. You focus on the shot, not the target. This is not passive resignation. It is a strategic surrender. It's the wisdom to know where your power truly lies. It is the understanding that you can be serene and effective even in the midst of chaos, because your peace is not dependent on the chaos subsiding. Your peace is dependent on how you choose to respond to it. Here, then, is the powerful synthesis. We must act with unwavering discipline, fueled not by fleeting motivation, but by our deep commitments to ourselves. And we must aim that disciplined action only at the things that are truly within our sphere of control, our own choices, our own responses, our own character. This is the path to becoming an unstoppable force and an immovable object simultaneously. Unstoppable in your action and immovable in your tranquility. This framework gives us a new lens through which to view the world, especially the most challenging part of it, our interactions with other people. We know we cannot control them. So, how do we navigate our relationships in a way that protects our peace and integrity while still being compassionate and effective? How do our controlled actions influence this uncontrollable part of our lives? This is where our philosophy becomes intensely practical, and it is where we will begin our next conversation. In our last conversation, we arrived at a powerful and demanding synthesis for a life of purpose. We embraced the path of discipline over the whims of motivation, and we learned to aim that discipline like a skilled archer, focusing only on what is within our control while gracefully accepting what is not. This framework is magnificent when we are alone with our work or our thoughts. But it brings us to the most complex and challenging arena of all our relationships with other people. Here the lines feel blurry. The actions and moods of others, which are clearly outside our control, have a profound impact on our own inner peace. We can't control our partner, our children, our boss, or our friends. So how do we navigate this intricate dance? How do we maintain our own tranquility and integrity in a world so deeply intertwined with others without resorting to futile attempts at control or retreating into passive victimhood? The Stoic answer to this is not about manipulation or withdrawal. It is about a radical form of leadership, leading by example. This brings us to our 13th essential truth, a truth that places the power and responsibility for the quality of your relationships squarely back into your own hands. It is this: you teach people how to treat you. Let that land for a moment. This is not about blaming yourself for the poor behavior of others. It is about recognizing a profound and empowering reality. People learn how to interact with you based on the standard you consistently model and accept. Your actions are a constant silent lesson plan. Every time you tolerate disrespect, you are teaching that disrespect is an acceptable way to treat you. Every time you allow someone to cross a boundary without consequence, you are teaching that your boundaries are merely suggestions, not rules. Every time you say yes when your whole being is screaming no, you are teaching that your own needs are secondary to the desires of others. We don't teach with our words. We can give grand speeches about wanting respect, but if our actions permit disrespect, the actions are what will be believed. The ancient teacher Epictetus gave this timeless advice to his students: don't explain your philosophy. embody it. This is the very essence of teaching others how to treat you. Your embodied self-respect is the curriculum. When you treat your own time as precious, others learn not to waste it. When you speak to yourself with kindness, others learn that harshness is out of place in your presence. When you honor your own needs, others learn that you are not a resource to be depleted, but a sovereign being to be respected. Now, this can be a difficult truth to swallow because it requires us to look honestly at our own role in the dynamics we complain about. It forces us to move past the temporary comfort of blaming others and into the empowering work of self-reflection. If a particular person in your life consistently drains your energy or ignores your needs, you must ask the hard question, what have I been doing that teaches them this is okay? Often the answer is found in our desire to be nice, but we must learn the critical difference between being nice and being kind. Nice is often rooted in fear, the fear of conflict, the fear of not being liked. Niceness will sacrifice its own well-being on the altar of another person's comfort. It will swallow its truth to keep a fragile peace. But kindness is rooted in love and respect, and that includes love and respect for oneself. Kindness can be firm. It is an act of kindness to yourself to set a clear boundary. And in the long run, it is an act of kindness to the other person to be clear and honest, as it prevents the slow, poisonous buildup of resentment and misunderstanding. Your clarity is a gift, even if it feels uncomfortable in the moment. As you begin to embody this new standard, as you start teaching from this new lesson plan of self-respect, the world around you will begin to respond. Some people will rise to meet your new standard, and your relationships with them will deepen and become more authentic. Others will resist and may fall away. Let them. You are not a zookeeper responsible for keeping everyone in your enclosure. You are a gardener responsible for cultivating the conditions for your own growth. And as you stand in this newly cultivated garden of self-respect, you will find that a lot of voices from the outside will try to tell you how to tend to it. People will have opinions about your new fence. They will offer suggestions, warnings, and critiques. They will offer advice. This leads us to our 14th truth, a vital skill of discernment needed to protect your inner peace. It is this advice reflects the giver, not always the truth. All advice, no matter how well-intentioned, comes to you through a filter. That filter is the other person's life, their unique collection of fears, regrets, triumphs, and biases. When someone says, well, if I were you, the most important thing to remember is that they are not you. They do not have your history, your values, your intuition, or your unique purpose. Their advice is not a pure reflection of objective reality. It is an autobiography of their own journey. The person who is burned in business may advise you to be overly cautious, projecting their fear onto your ambition. The person who regrets not taking a risk may advise you to be reckless, trying to live out their unlived life through you. Epictetus offered this beautiful piece of guidance. Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly. Before you put on someone else's advice, you must first be deeply familiar with the shape of your own soul. Your core values are the ultimate filter through which all external opinions must pass. If you value freedom and adventure, the advice of someone who values security above all else may not be the right fit for you, no matter how much you love and respect them. Living a life based on borrowed voices is one of the quietest ways to lose yourself. You begin to make small adjustments to your choices to avoid criticism or to gain approval. Over time, these small adjustments lead you down a path that feels foreign, a life that feels more like a hollow performance than a vibrant reality. You end up wearing a costume that someone else picked out for you, wondering why you feel so uncomfortable in your own skin. So how do we become wise curators of the counsel we receive? We can develop a simple internal filtering process. When given advice, ask yourself these questions. Is this advice coming from a place of love or a place of fear? Is it encouraging my expansion, or is it trying to keep me safely in a box? Does this person's own life reflect the kind of values and outcomes I aspire to? This practice of discernment is not an act of arrogance. It is an act of sovereignty. It is acknowledging that while wisdom can come from many sources, the ultimate authority on your life must be you. You can listen with an open heart, you can take what is useful, and you can lovingly leave the rest. You can say, "Thank you so much for sharing that with me. I will definitely think about it." And that can be a complete and honest response. You do not owe anyone an explanation for why you ultimately choose your own path. Here then, we find another layer of freedom. We learn to teach others how to treat us by embodying our own self-respect. And we learn to honor our own inner wisdom by discerning which external voices we allow to influence us. We are building the walls of our inner citadel, not with stone, but with clarity and integrity. But what happens when the threat is not coming from the outside? What happens when we have set our boundaries, we are filtering advice, and we are ready to act, but the chaos is coming from within our own minds? We find ourselves stuck in a loop, turning a simple choice into an endlessly complex problem, wrestling with every possible outcome until we are too exhausted to move at all. This is the prison of overthinking, a place where we become our own jailer, and understanding how to escape that self-imposed prison. That is where our journey must take us next. At the end of our last conversation, we found ourselves standing at the threshold of action, armed with new standards for our relationships, and a new filter for the advice we receive. We have done the difficult work of clearing the space around us. And yet, so often right at this moment, the greatest obstacle reveals itself. And it is not in the external world. It is within us. It is the labyrinth of our own mind. It is the quiet, creeping paralysis of overthinking. We've all been there. A decision that should be simple, whether to take a new job, start a new project, or have a difficult conversation, becomes a tangled web of what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. We analyze it from every conceivable angle. We make pro and con lists. We ask for opinions. We research endlessly. We believe we are being careful, prudent, and strategic. But if we are truly honest with ourselves, we are not moving forward. We are simply spinning in place, creating the illusion of progress while remaining perfectly safely still. We have entered the self-imposed prison of overthinking. This brings us to our 15th essential truth, a truth designed to be a key to unlock that prison door. It is this: overthinking is just delayed action. Let's be clear about what overthinking is. It is not deep, productive contemplation. It is not wise deliberation. Overthinking is fear wearing a mask of intelligence. It is our mind's cleverest trick to keep us from taking a risk. Because as long as we are still thinking it through, we don't have to face the possibility of failure, rejection, or discomfort. We get to stay in the theoretical, where everything is safe and nothing can harm us. We are like a general who spends all his time drawing and redrawing battle plans, but never actually engages the enemy. No battle plan, no matter how brilliant, has ever won a war by itself. The Stoic philosopher Seneca, whose wisdom we have returned to many times, observed, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." This is the definitive statement on overthinking. In our minds, we live through 1,000 failures. We rehearse the awkward conversation. We feel the sting of the imagined rejection. We experience the embarrassment of the project that doesn't work out. We put ourselves through all of this emotional turmoil for disasters that most of the time never even come to pass. And the cost of this imaginary suffering is very real. It is the life we are not living while we are trapped in our heads. So, what is the antidote? It is not to try and stop thinking, which is an impossible task. The antidote is to act, to take one small, tangible, imperfect step. You see, clarity is not the parent of action. It is the child of action. We think we need to have it all figured out before we move, but the opposite is true. We must move in order to figure it out. Remember our analogy of the parked car? You can sit in the driver's seat and turn the steering wheel all day long, but the car will not change direction. It is only when the car is in motion, even just rolling slowly, that the steering wheel becomes effective. Action is what makes the steering wheel of your life work. Taking one small step, sending one email, making one phone call, writing one paragraph gives you more real-world information, more actual feedback than 100 hours of hypothetical debate in your own mind. It gives you something real to respond to. So, when you find yourself stuck in a loop of overthinking, shrink the action. Make it so small it's almost laughable. Don't think about starting the business. Think about drafting one email to a potential mentor. Don't think about getting healthy. Think about putting on your shoes and walking to the mailbox. The purpose of this first tiny action is not to achieve the grand goal. The purpose is simply to interrupt the pattern of paralysis, to break the spell, to shift your state from thinking to being, from contemplation to embodiment. And this brings us to a deeper layer of this issue. So often the subjects of our most intense overthinking are not abstract decisions, but our circumstances themselves. We ruminate endlessly on a toxic work environment, trying to figure out the perfect strategy to navigate our difficult boss. We overanalyze a draining relationship, trying to find the magic words that will finally make the other person change. We are in essence spending all our mental energy trying to figure out how a plant can learn to thrive in poisoned soil. We study the soil, we curse the soil, we develop new elaborate techniques for survival in the soil. But we rarely stop to ask the most powerful and obvious question: what if the answer isn't to get better at surviving here? What if the answer is simply to move to a different pot? This leads us to our 16th and deeply compassionate truth. It is a permission slip that many of us desperately need to hear. The truth is, you cannot heal in the same environment that made you sick. Our culture often glorifies endurance. We are told to stick it out, to be tough, to push through no matter what. And while there is virtue in resilience, there is no virtue in needlessly subjecting yourself to a constantly damaging environment. A person, like a plant, requires certain conditions to thrive. If the soil is toxic, if the air is polluted, if there is no sunlight, the plant will wither, no matter how strong its seed may have been. An environment is more than just a physical place. It is a system of energies, expectations, and behaviors that are constantly shaping you, whether you are conscious of it or not. If you are in a workplace that thrives on cynicism and gossip, no amount of positive thinking will make you immune to its effects. If you are in a relationship where you are constantly walking on eggshells, your nervous system will remain in a state of high alert, making genuine peace impossible. You can be doing all the inner work, meditating, journaling, practicing gratitude. But if your outer world is constantly sending signals of threat and disrespect, your growth will always hit a ceiling. You will be trying to fill a bucket with water while someone else is drilling holes in the bottom. We must learn to distinguish between hardening and healing. Staying in a harmful environment forces you to build armor. You become calloused, guarded, and defensive. You might mistake this for strength, but it is not. It is a survival mechanism. True healing is the opposite. Healing is a softening. It is an unfolding. It is the slow, tender process of feeling safe enough to let your armor down. And that can only happen in an environment of safety, respect, and nourishment. Epictetus advised his students to keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best. He understood that our associations are not neutral, they are formative. Choosing your environment, the people you spend time with, the place you work, even the city you live in, is one of the most significant acts of self-care you can perform. And this is where our last truth about overthinking finds its ultimate expression. Often the most powerful and decisive action you can take to escape the prison of overthinking is the act of leaving. It is the decision to stop analyzing the poisoned soil and to bravely transplant yourself. This is not failure. It is not running away. It is a courageous strategic choice based on the data you have collected. It is the ultimate act of taking responsibility for your own well-being. So, we see the powerful interplay here. We must learn to interrupt the internal paralysis of overthinking by taking small, decisive actions. And we must have the wisdom to recognize when the most powerful action of all is to change our external environment, to give ourselves a chance to heal in new, healthier soil. Once we have made this choice, once we have acted decisively, either by changing our approach within our current situation or by bravely moving to a new one, we are faced with a new and wonderful challenge. We are standing in a new garden, a space we have intentionally chosen for our growth. The question now becomes, how do we cultivate it? With our newfound clarity, where do we direct our focus to ensure that this time we are planting the seeds of the person we truly wish to become? Our minds are powerful tools, but they need direction. They need a compass. Understanding how to consciously direct our most powerful mental faculty, our attention is the key to shaping our new reality. And it is this art of directed attention that we shall explore in our next conversation. At the end of our last discussion, we had arrived at a place of profound and decisive action. We had acknowledged that sometimes the most courageous step we can take is to leave a place that is no longer fertile ground for our soul, and that the antidote to the paralysis of overthinking is to take one small, tangible step in the direction of our values. So, let us imagine we have done just that. We have either bravely changed our approach to our circumstances, or We have bravely changed our circumstances altogether. We find ourselves standing in a new garden, a space cleared of the old debris, the soil ready for new seeds. This is a moment of immense potential, but it is also a moment that requires a new kind of wisdom. For a garden left untended will quickly be overgrown by whatever seeds the wind happens to carry in. How do we ensure that this new beginning is different? How do we consciously cultivate this space so that it yields the life we truly wish to live? The answer lies in learning to master our most powerful, creative, and vital resource. This brings us to our 17th essential truth. Your attention shapes your identity. Your attention is not a passive mirror that simply reflects the world around you. It is an active spotlight, and whatever that spotlight lingers on, it nourishes. It gives it life. It magnifies its presence in your experience. If you consistently shine the spotlight of your attention on your grievances, your anxieties, and the injustices of the world, you are actively watering the seeds of resentment and fear within you. Those feelings will grow into towering, thorny bushes that snag you at every turn and block out the sun. Conversely, if you consciously choose to shine that same spotlight on your opportunities for growth, on the small efforts you are making, on the values you are trying to embody, you are watering the seeds of your own strength, character, and resilience. In our modern world, we think of attention as something to be paid, as if it's a currency we give away. The Stoics saw it differently. They used the term prosochi, which translates to a state of vigilant, continuous mindfulness. It was not a passive state, but the fundamental spiritual attitude, the practice of keeping one's mind focused on what is truly important, living a life of virtue and reason, moment by moment. There is a fascinating mechanism in your brain that modern science calls the reticular activating system, or RAAS. You can think of it as a gatekeeper or a filter for your consciousness. There are millions of bits of information available to your senses at any given moment, and your RAS filters out almost all of them, only allowing what you have tagged as important to come through. Have you ever decided you want to buy a particular model of car, and then suddenly you start seeing that exact car everywhere? The cars were always there. Your attention has simply been primed to notice them. Your life works in the same way. When you consciously decide to focus on gratitude, your RAS begins to actively scan your environment for things to be grateful for. When you decide to focus on learning, you begin to see lessons and opportunities where before you only saw obstacles. You are quite literally retraining your brain to see a different world, not because the world has changed, but because you have changed the filter through which you view it. This is not about ignoring reality or pretending pain doesn't exist. A Stoic sees the world clearly with all its hardships. This is about a conscious choice after the initial perception. A problem arises, you acknowledge it. You feel the frustration or the fear, but then you must make a conscious choice. Will you allow the spotlight of your sustained attention to remain on the problem itself, feeding your sense of hopelessness? Or will you deliberately pivot that spotlight onto the question, what is my most virtuous response? What is within my control? What can I learn from this? What is the next small step I can take? This practice of directed attention is how you actively sculpt your own soul. It is the art of choosing the dye, moment by moment, with which your inner world will be colored. And as you engage in this practice, as you consistently direct your attention toward action, growth, and your own internal locus of control, something remarkable begins to take shape within you. A new quality emerges. It is a quiet, grounded assurance that is born not of ego, but of evidence. You begin to develop genuine, unshakable confidence. But this confidence is nothing like the loud, brittle version the world so often tries to sell us. This brings us to our 18th truth, a truth that demystifies confidence and places it firmly within your grasp. It is this confidence comes from doing, not from feeling. We have a deep cultural misunderstanding of confidence. We think of it as a personality trait, something you are either born with or not. We wait to feel confident before we act. We say, I'll apply for that job when I feel more confident, or I'll speak up once I feel more sure of myself. This is like waiting for the harbor to be perfectly calm before you learn to sail. It is a recipe for staying docked for your entire life. Real confidence is not a prerequisite for action. It is the byproduct of action. It is the reward you earn for having done the thing that scared you. It is the reputation you build with yourself. Think of it as a cycle of self-trust. It works like this. You make a small promise to yourself. I will take a 10-minute walk today, and you keep it. Your mind registers this action on a deep level. A small deposit is made in your self-trust account. It says, I am a person who does what I say I will do. The next day you do it again. Another deposit. The balance grows. Each time you choose the difficult action over the easy comfort each time you have, the awkward conversation each time you show up for your new habit. When you don't feel like it, you are making another deposit. Confidence is the accumulated interest on those deposits of kept promises. It is the quiet internal knowledge based on a mountain of evidence that you can count on yourself. Epictetus challenged his followers with the question, how long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself? Demanding the best for yourself is not about waiting until you feel worthy of it. It is about acting in a way that is worthy of it right now and allowing the feeling of worthiness to catch up later. And this reframes our relationship with fear. Confidence is not the absence of fear. I cannot stress this enough. Courage is not the absence of fear. The confident person still feels the butterflies in their stomach. They still hear the voice of doubt in their head. The difference is that their self-trust has become weightier than their fear. They have proven to themselves through repetition that they can feel fear and act anyway. Confidence is the memory of your own resilience. Use the analogy of the gym. You do not develop the confidence to lift a heavy weight by reading books about weightlifting or by affirming to yourself that you are strong. You develop it by showing up and lifting a lighter weight consistently. Each repetition, each rep is a deposit. Life is exactly the same. Every time you practice your new skill, that is a rep. Every time you hold your boundary, that is a rep. Every time you choose a wise response over an emotional reaction, that is a rep. These reps build the muscle of confidence. It is not born, it is built. So we see the beautiful practical progression. We stand in our new garden, our new space of potential. We use the spotlight of our attention to consciously nourish the seeds of growth and virtue. And the result of this sustained, focused action is the emergence of a quiet, durable confidence built brick by brick on a foundation of self-trust. And when you have this kind of confidence, a confidence that is internal and evidence-based, not external and ego-based, it fundamentally changes how you show up in the world. It changes your presence. You no longer walk into a room needing to prove something or seeking validation. You walk in with a sense of groundedness that others can feel. You are able to move beyond the realm of simply impressing people and into the far more meaningful realm of truly connecting with and impacting them. How this inner strength radiates outward and how it transforms our legacy in the lives of others. That is the final stage of our journey together, and it is where we will begin our next conversation. When we last spoke, we uncovered a profound truth that genuine, unshakable confidence is not something we are born with, but something we build brick by brick with every promise we keep to ourselves. It is the earned reward for directing our attention and our actions toward the person we wish to become. This brings us to a beautiful and essential question. What is this confidence for? Is the goal of all this inner work, the discipline, the boundary, setting, the self-reflection, simply our own peace of mind? While that is a worthy outcome, the Stoics would argue that it is not the ultimate end. The final purpose of forging a strong, tranquil, and virtuous inner self is so that we can show up in the world in a better way. It is the foundation that allows us to move beyond ourselves and truly serve humanity. Our inner work becomes our outer gift. This leads us to our 19th essential truth, a truth that speaks to the legacy we leave in the hearts of others. It is this: people will remember how you made them feel. Decades from now, no one will remember the clever thing you said in a meeting. They will not remember the title on your business card, the price of your car, or the number of followers you had online. All the things we strive so hard to make impressive will fade like mist. What will remain, what will echo in the memories of the people whose lives you touched, is the energy you brought into a room. It is the quality of your presence. Did you make them feel seen or judged? Did you make them feel heard, or were you just waiting for your turn to speak? Did you make them feel safe and expanded, or small and anxious? In our hyper-connected yet deeply disconnected world, one of the rarest and most precious gifts you can give another human being is your full, undivided, present attention. When you can sit with someone without glancing at your phone, without your mind being on your to-do list, and truly listen, not just to their words, but to the meaning behind them. You are offering them a sanctuary. You are telling them, with your presence alone, you matter. The psychologist Carl Jung said that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. The grounded, confident presence we have worked so hard to cultivate is not neutral. It is a powerful, transformative agent. When you are at peace with yourself, you bring peace into the room with you. When you have learned to be compassionate with your own flaws, you naturally extend that grace to others. Your inner state radiates outward. You cannot fake this. Your energy does not lie. This is the ultimate expression of our Stoic practice. The virtue of sympatheia is the recognition that we are all part of one interconnected whole, like the individual limbs of a single body. Therefore, the work we do to heal and strengthen ourselves is not a selfish act. It is our duty to the whole. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What is not good for the beehive is not good for the bee." Our personal well-being and the well-being of our community are one and the same. By becoming a source of calm, clarity, and kindness, you are serving the world in the most fundamental way possible. You are leaving a legacy not of accomplishments, but of impact. A legacy written in the quiet moments of genuine human connection. And so, we arrive at the end of our journey together, for now. We have traversed 20 painful but essential truths. We have moved from taking radical responsibility for our lives, to understanding the power of our actions, to cultivating our attention, to building our confidence, and finally to recognizing our impact on others. How do we hold all of this together? How do we make it our daily practice? It all comes down to one final unifying principle. Our 20th truth is the North Star that guides every other choice. It is the single thought to hold in your mind when you wake up in the morning and the final reflection to have before you sleep. It is this live for the person you are becoming. Your life is being forged in every single moment with every single choice. And every choice is a vote. When you choose to hit the snooze button, instead of waking up to greet the day, you have just cast a vote for a version of yourself that values ease over discipline. When you choose to have the difficult, honest conversation, instead of letting resentment fester, you have just cast a vote for a version of yourself that values courage and connection. When you choose to put down your phone and be present with your family, you have cast a vote for a version of yourself that values love over distraction. These votes are not insignificant. They are the building blocks of your character. They are compounding over time. Who you will be 5 years from now is not a mystery. It is the direct and inevitable outcome of the votes you cast today, tomorrow, and the day after that. You are the sole architect of your future self. So I invite you to personify this future self. Imagine them. The version of you that is wiser, stronger, more compassionate, more at peace. The you that has become the person you have always hoped to be. This person is not a distant fantasy. They exist right now as a potential within you. And they are watching. They are hoping you will make the choice that honors them. When you are faced with a decision between the easy path and the better path, ask yourself, which choice is a vote for that person? Which action builds their future? When you view your life through this lens, the small daily struggles are imbued with a new and sacred meaning. Going for that walk when you are tired is no longer a chore. It is an act of allegiance to your future health. Reading a book for 20 minutes is no longer just a hobby. It is a declaration that you are becoming a lifelong learner. Holding your boundary with grace is no longer a confrontation. It is you building a future where you are respected. This is the great, long, beautiful game of life. It is not about a radical overnight transformation. It is about radical consistency over time. It is about falling down and getting back up and casting the next right vote. It is about living in accordance with your highest nature, as the Stoics would say. It is the quiet, daily, relentless, and deeply loving act of building a soul. Your future is not something you find. It is something you build. And the building starts now with your very next choice. Thank you for walking this path with me. The journey is far from over. It has, in fact, just begun. Stay grounded, stay growing.